Hi, it's Melody. Welcome to Magic Happens with Melody Who. Today I have a very special guest. Tori Rerick is a medicine woman, a PharmD, and a very special magical being, all rolled into one person. Let's find out more. Hi, Tori.
Hi, Melody.
Hi. Tell us all the magic that is Tori Rerick.
Okay. There's so much magic in my life right now. And it's been present since I was a child. And I think that through line is so important to trace. So I find myself these days living a lot like I did early on, enjoying symbolism, enjoying myth, and I have my own oracle deck, following her oracle deck, which is part of why I'm here, and how we met is through the magic of symbolism. So I am a mother, I am a spiritual guide, I am an oracle artist, and it just keeps expanding.
So tell me a little bit about your upbringing. When you said that your childhood was magical and you're bringing that into your adult life right now, tell me a little bit.
So to keep it sort of brief, the idea that I want to share here is that when I felt most like myself and most enchanted was when I was with nature and when I was pretending and imagining. And I feel like divination allows you to play with that. And there are so many forms of divination. So the deeper I get into practicing magic and ritual, the more I'm like, I actually know a lot of this. So I was an only child. I spent a lot of time alone. So
where did you grow up?
Okay, I was born in Minneapolis, so I'm Midwest through and through. I grew up in Moorhead, Minnesota, and my husband and I came out to Colorado just 10 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was alone a lot, which could be seen two ways. Sometimes I felt lonely and sometimes I was my own best friend. And so I just learned to be really in my head.
Were you an only child?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so it was like, I just made things believe. I made them real for myself. And a lot of what I was interested in was fairy tale, magic, myth, nature.
Did you have a parent figure or some adult figure in your life that brought that into you, or did it just kind of come naturally? Were you reading fairy tale books?
Yeah, nothing stands out that was like, that I was really attached to. I think it was just what the natural way was. And because I spent so much time with adults, my mind needed something to do to tune out their conversations and occupy myself. And my parents were also separated. And so I do remember one of my dad's girlfriends, I loved her so much, and upon reflection of why I loved her so much is because she would drop in and come into my world, and not a lot of adults did that. So I was just like, wow, she really gets me, and she meets me where I am. And so I find myself making those connections now where it's like someone really gets the plants or someone really gets the magic, and we find a connection. My father's Nigerian. He moved to the States from Nigeria, and my mother is many generations white, Caucasian, but we have strong Norse lineage. And so I grew up very close to my Norse grandparents, and just within the last year I've dove really deep into their mythology and actually discovered the runes in a special way that connects with my deck. So I'm rediscovering even now parts of my lineage that are fascinating.
Growing up in Minnesota, did you ever feel like, oh, I felt like an outsider?
Yes. I guess to be honest, yes, because it was very white, and I was one of the only people of color in my school and often in my community. And so that was a big part of my identity, was how different that was. But I also felt like I had a lot of friends. I felt like I navigated how to get into friend groups and make people like me, for lack of better term, be a chameleon, which is sort of two-sided, again, where I wasn't living in my authenticity fully, but I found safety in that. And I never really got bored. I was able to find my way in all these different groups of people.
Growing up, did your mother tell you about the Norse lineage, or how did you come into full embrace of it.
Yeah, Minnesota itself is quite Scandinavian. That's part of the culture there, especially where I grew up, Fargo, Moorhead area. But my grandparents, because my parents were separated at a young age from me, I grew up very close with my mother's parents who have that Norse line. And my grandma was very involved in genealogy and tracing her lineage back, and even a publication called The Hulling Log. And it was just part of everyday life and the religion as well.
Which part of Scandinavia did they come from?
Norway. So it was part just the general culture, but also my family line. My grandma was very interested in staying connected to her own roots. We ate lefse. Lutefisk was a conversation every year, a type of fish. So it was kind of baked in.
Hey, if you're here, can you do me a favor? Subscribe to my YouTube channel at Melody Who, or subscribe to Magic Happens with Melody Who on all major podcast platforms. In this way, my happy face and my happy voice will be here when you need a little sunshine. So you got your degree in pharmacy. What brought you to that path?
So many things. The idea of the healing arts, which I didn't consider it that then, just being in the medical field. I wanted to make my parents proud, and from my Nigerian line, it's that whole idea of the immigrant parent really wanting you to be a couple of things: lawyer, doctor, attorney, high power, strong in the community, helpful. And it just seemed like the best fit for me outside of nursing or being a doctor. Pharmacy just felt like that sort of in between, like you were sort of in, one foot out. You could still be part of the community, but not be so in charge of people's health, which isn't necessarily true. Pharmacists are a lifeline, but also wanted to make a lot of money, etc., etc.
Once you entered pharmacy studies, what did you discover along the way, and what brought you to what you do today?
Thank you for the question. I discovered that it was the right path. While I was doing it, it was right for me. I was really in a place where I wanted people to lay out my life. And that's what pharmacy is. The program was 6 years long, and it was like, do this and then you will succeed. And I was like, cool, I will do that. And life started to happen in terms of my mental health starting to wobble and finding different ways that I could support myself. I was very much in line with medications at the time of finishing school, and that shifted as I was graduating and getting into the real world. I turned more holistic myself. And even thinking back to some papers I wrote in middle school and high school, it was about natural medicines or alternative medicines, which are really the traditional medicines. So it's interesting. I just went for the pharmacy, the Western field, because it was accessible and there was a path. But the farther I go now, I'm returning to the more ancient wisdom, and they're both still so valid, but I find it suits me more to be using my spiritual gifts in combination with holistic recommendations and support.
If you don't mind, could we talk a little bit more about the mental health element? Because as you know, a lot of people have mental health, struggles, but what we have available in terms of, medication, it seems to only bring people so far. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of other variables that come to supporting mental health. Would you like to share a little bit about your own personal journey?
Yes. And so that's something that struck me, what you're saying about the variables and the support and the multifaceted approach. I remember that so clearly in pharmacy school. A lot of things have left me, but something I remember was take this medication in addition to therapy, or there was always like a 2-3 pronged approach to the success rate of the medication. And I found that to be true in my life. I was taking the pill, doing the thing, everyone around me was taking the pill, and yet there was like an emptiness, there was an inability to really feel comfort in myself and my being.
Back in the days, mental health wasn't as much on the radar as it is now. Mm-hmm. But back then, I feel like traditionally there will be a lot of discussions and maybe there's more just conversations. Mm-hmm. Versus nowadays, I feel like if you have some sort of mental health struggles, mm-hmm. you see like a medical provider, and immediately you get a prescription.
Yes.
So, and I don't know, I just feel like, shouldn't there be more exploration, understanding the cause, and if you don't mind, would you mind sharing about what you think was the cause of your mental health, journey?
Yeah, so that's what I kept going, and it's like I'm still working on it now. I'm still finding what works for my mental health. And it's almost like a game of chess where I move one piece and I can express myself a little bit more, find resources at that time that work for me, move another piece, and it always is shifting. Right now I feel so privileged and resourced to have a lot of time and space for processing, which is why I feel like pharmacy didn't really work out for me as a career path, is I just wasn't able to really do all of the processing in one time. So what I found is, there were traumatic events. There was one specific traumatic event in my childhood that I felt was not processed and handled correctly by my mother. So there was a lot of wounding there, the event itself, and then the deterioration of that relationship with my mother, which, in the beginning of therapy and medication use, it was like, well, first of all, it was like, cover that up. I'll just cover it up with the medication. I didn't even know that was affecting me.
But I feel like that's the kind of the standard approach nowadays, right?
Put something on
medication.
But then it's like there has to be a level of knowing yourself because and comfort with finding out more. Because once I had the space to do that, I took off the medication and went deeper into therapy and healing modalities. So I think that there is this dance that has to be done to know yourself and to be willing to continue looking at yourself to find what the root is and to address the root.
So based on your own explorations and your own journey of finding more about yourself and how to heal yourself, are there any suggestions that you want to offer the world if people are, struggling with certain, maybe traumatic past or episodes, and then they have been just prescribed a bunch of meds?
Yes.
Are there some modalities or something that you've learned and then you can help people? What would you tell them?
I think even though it might not feel like it's a journey to trust yourself, but I think you know what's best for you. And so if there are any voices that have you questioning if this is the path, you're allowed to research that. You're allowed to do your own background information and trust what you know. And you're allowed to bring in different modalities. I don't think anyone's gonna do that for you. This last sort of go around I had with what I now call shadow work, which could be seen as maybe like a mental health crisis or a dip or something. I created my own care team of therapist, sabbatical guide. I took a break off of work. I was deep into microdosing psilocybin and also did a major journey with that. I did something called TTT, trauma touch therapy, which is a somatic form of getting back into my body. So I created my own care team. And nothing had been done like that before and presented to me. I'm sure people are doing that, but it's like no one handed it to me. But at that point I had felt autonomous enough to put that together, trusted my relationships, my support team to kind of undo myself a bit. So I think you know what works for you. And I've tried all the things. I also was on an SSRI, 2 different ones at different times of my life. And so I think don't be afraid to revisit and reflect. And after a period of time, say, is this still working for me, or is it time to try something else?
You are definitely what I'd call a healer. From your background in pharmacy, from your explorations in CBD and its power to help people, and also from an intuitive point of view with your oracle intuitive work. I mean, that's all the healing arts combined in one. Tell us a little bit of your work, and let's say if someone is in crisis, they come to you, how would you help them?
Yeah, I think this is where my foundations in pharmacy are helpful, is I do have that sort of professional scope of seeing a person and knowing if I'm able to support them or not, and be honest in that. This is what I provide in my work, and this is what to expect, and or here's a referral elsewhere. But I really do like to work with connecting people back to their trust and their intuition, because a lot is known from there. And I think that's when it gets tricky in the traditional medical field, is we give our trust away. So that is a really integral part of what I do and what has worked for me. Something as simple as oracle cards, but it's fun, it's playful, it's expressive, to be journaling every day and figuring out what something means to you. So I work with people on that basis. I'll meet people one-off and we'll have a reading, and I just sort of help orient them to some spaces and energy fields that they might want to pay attention to that could support them on their journey forward. Or I might assist them with a relationship with cannabis and developing something more intentional rather than kind of that drug or medication relationship where I just take it every day and I move on. When you work with the plants, you have a chance, and even when you work with medications, but the plants really offer you an opportunity to listen and be more intentional. So I work with people on that basis as well.
I have to talk to you about your oracle cards.
Let's.
So, the Follow Your Heart Oracle deck, and from my understanding, these were all hand illustrations.
Yes.
You designed everything, you launched these sets of cards, and I've seen you, in our community, helping people with this way. Tell me a little bit about how this came into being, how, what brought the inspiration and what you're doing with it.
Okay, I'd love to show you and share. So yes, this is Follow Your Heart Oracle. It's a highly inspired deck of watercolor art and wisdom. There are 24 symbols, which I just intuited. The number 24 is kind of low for a deck. Tarot has 72, 78, but I was just compelled to create something of my own. I was pregnant with my daughter Daphne, my second child.
How old is she?
She is now 5.
Oh, so your 2 kids, they're...
Rex is 9 and Daphne's 5.
All right.
And so I just had this sort of channel of inspiration. I was like, now is the time. Let's do 2 babies, 2 things. And cannabis spirit was a big part of the creation and the channeling and my mindset and wisdom collection. So she gets her own card within that. And I decided I wanted to bring a tool forward. I was already doing some coaching, but people like something tangible. And so I created this deck to support with journaling or self-reflection, because that was something that really helped me and gave me some independence as far as my well-being. So it's a tool for that.
Tell me a little bit about what you just mentioned, the CBD cannabis spirit, because throughout history, there are so many artists that have taken inspiration, that have channeled, information through the use of cannabis. I mean, for a while it was a little bit of a taboo, but to be honest, if we learn history, it's always been there.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about cannabis spirit and what it means to you.
Yeah, I feel it. I have a relationship with her that goes beyond consumption. I feel I've connected with the plant enough to be able to receive her wisdom and be in reciprocity with that. To not only be taking from her, but to listen and utilize what I learn to help others grow. And even in the vein of reality where this plant has been suppressed and been taboo and criminalized, supporting and being an advocate for restoring that in communities is part of that as well.
How did this relationship start? What was the origin, the meeting story?
Well, my husband, I give great thanks to Nate. He was I don't want to say the word shaman, but if there was such a thing for introducing me, I really trusted my husband, and he had always been a stereotypical stoner, even when I was in pharmacy school. So that transition from, whoa, this is not in line with my field of work, you are okay over there, but slowly started leaning on it in some of those troubling times, actually in my last few years of school, and not intentionally, just kind of doing the thing. But then coming out to Colorado and realizing that this plant was so magical, had so much to give, and I wanted to feel good when I was consuming. So it just became a more regular thing. As I transitioned out of medication, you could really say that she is now my medication. But I actually have my own podcast on cannabis. 6 Degrees from Cannabis was a pharmacy podcast I did where I shared all different stories, and we really talked on there about the different ways it helps, because yes, there's a medical side, but even recreational use can feel medicinal. So just over time, developed relationship with her, learned what the consumption methods were that felt good in my body and weren't too much. And then started also working with Jessica at Moon Mother Hemp and learning about more of the technicalities of the actual plant and just immersing myself. It was really a dream to start to know cannabis as a medicine out here and transition out of pharmacy into working with Jessica at Moon Mother Hemp, because I had always wanted to know one drug really well, which wasn't what pharmacy was. Pharmacy is knowing a lot of drugs, a little bit or really well, a spectrum there. So to really hone in on cannabis, it was such a gift. And I would use myself as anecdotal medicine, see other women and people around me, and gather that information as well.
And we know that a lot of pharmaceutical drugs, have their active compounds derived from some major plants. In pharmacy school, how much were you kind of introduced to the plant element of the, active compounds?
It would be a footnote, like maybe if we're talking about aspirin, it would be a footnote about salicylic acid, or
morphine,
or foxglove. It would just be sort of like a footnote of this is derived from this, or I do remember. I don't know if it was like a couple classes or even a full semester on more herbal natural medicines, and a lot of that was more of the perspective of warning these could interact. I just remember St. John's wort being like, no. And now it's like, oh, that's such an amazing medicine.
I just went to do my harvest.
Oh, it's so lovely. So I remember it being more in the context of stay away from these. These are and not necessarily, I don't want to paint it maliciously, but the system is the system. And it's also like, I was in North Dakota, Minnesota, so how often am I going to see that versus now landing in Colorado where a lot of people are more holistically based? I feel like it would be really appropriate to know here, not that it wouldn't be there, but just different regions and what we had time to focus on. I had sort of a crunched program too, so.
This is just such a fascinating topic to go, we can go so far into this topic, but pharmacy or science and tradition, herbalism, right? It seems like there's so many modalities to heal people. And of course, as we know, throughout history, there's always these kind of ebbs and flows of different schools of knowledge that take center stage. And what I admire in you is that you have that scientific school background as a professional, but then you're also willing to say that, yes, there are other ways that we can heal ourselves via plants, via intuition. Have you ever encountered any resistance to only pick one way or the other?
Resistance? No, I think, again, just how we started the conversation with my lineage and sort of merging these two seemingly different spaces and cultures, I can do the same in my career with this bridge of pharmacy and herbalism. I feel like I'm that friend that's going to be like, my preference and my dream is for this to happen in your life, but also if you need to do XYZ, like do it. I've also done it or whatever, where I'm like, truly whatever works for you.
I love that open-mindedness of not saying, no, science and pharmacy is the way to go, or no, you have to do herbal medicine or holistic, intuitive healing. It's like, yeah, you can pick and choose whatever works for you.
Yeah, and I think as a mother, that's been really challenging, but also a strength because kids are gray areas and I have to choose if this is the right thing, and it really takes a lot of brain power to have so many intentional choices, but I feel it most in my integrity about it when I have chosen and there hasn't been a plan laid in front of me. I have chosen the path.
Have you always been very in touch with the intuitive side, or did this kind of re-emerge in your life?
I think there's that blessing that it's always been in the background. Angels have truly guided me. I always have said cannabis has guided me. Cannabis is one of my guardian angels. But I did have a moment with my mental health after school where I came out of school, I didn't have hobbies. I didn't have a personality. Everything had been prescribed. And so this type of exploration was part of knowing myself again and becoming reconnected. And I wouldn't change it for the world. I wonder what I would be like entering a pharmacy now. I just feel like I have so much more of a grasp of what my needs are and how I work best. Whereas coming out of school, I just was kind of a cog.
So you mentioned that your husband, and you said you don't like the word, but I have to dig in there. let's talk about shamanism.
Okay.
Or what does it mean? What did he do? How does he identify with a shaman?
So he doesn't. He absolutely doesn't. He is like the most regular guy. And so we're different in that way, but we can meet each other. We definitely meet each other with cannabis. So he is so casual. He's so like, and just without giving the whole history, I had also come out of a relationship that was not supportive and leaning abusive before I met my husband. So there was a lot of repair that I had to do within myself and knowing myself from that. So coming to date my husband, I'd ask him these questions and try to receive assurance, and he would kind of be like, trust your intuition. Oh. What do you think? Do what you think is the best option. And that would send me, because I'm like, I actually don't know. This is really challenging for me. So just his demeanor in that way of like, do you? And is this good for you? This is good for me, so I'm gonna do me. But he just always had a steady relationship with cannabis, and I didn't see it affecting him negatively. Some people it does, or they utilize it as an excuse, or it leads to other things, but he just seemed ready, steady with cannabis. And so I just, watching him over the years, I really trusted his relationship with it, and trusted him to guide me into a relationship that felt healthy, safe, stable.
I went to an exhibition on cannabis and the history of cannabis at the Museum of California in Oakland. And that exhibition was mind-blowing, because growing up, it was criminalized, right? The possession or the use, or I don't know the details of the legality. But for quite a while, cannabis was criminalized. And I remember one quote that they put on the wall. And this is Oakland, California, so there are a lot of African American population. And this exhibition went on right after cannabis was legalized. And I remember that quote very clearly. He said, "I went to jail for this, yet now you are building big companies selling the same thing. Where's the justice in that?"
Absolutely. I have chills.
Right, me too. Back then it was, oh, that's bad. But what is, who gets to define what is good or bad, especially when it comes to planned use, right? I want to hear about your perspective on how did you encounter any kind of like destigmatization around the use of cannabis? And you also mentioned psilocybin. Yeah. And that is also a hot topic. So what is your view on that evolution?
Yes, it's quite similar, where working in this field, even though I'm not directly in the industry, I truly rep cannabis. She is part of my work and what I do and how I regulate myself. And so working with Jessica is when I actually became more aware at Moonmother Hemp, is when I became more aware of those crippling injustices and discrepancies in now the industry making money, making billions, and people still being in prison. So, she would partner with, and I became familiar with things like our organizations like Last Prisoner Project, and giving back to the community and fighting for justice.
What is that program?
Last Prisoner Project is a nonprofit that supports cannabis prisoner reform. So they help with advocacy as far as reintegration into society, telling people stories, and helping bridge that gap between broken families and lives and re-entering society if possible.
I just feel like there should be more done around that. Imagine you went into prison for selling cannabis, and then the laws changed and now you're still stuck.
Yes.
And you see all these big companies, they even do, like cannabis delivery. Yet you're in prison, and when you get out, the world is very different. So I'm just, hoping that these programs will benefit more people.
Yeah, and even in Colorado, record sealing, I have a friend with Expunge Colorado. This is Melanie Rose Rogers, and so she works with that organization to help with the legal side of things and reintegrating back into society.
Oh, that is so beautiful. Do you think it's too much if we do a demonstration of an oracle reading?
Let's pull a card. Yay. Let's pull a message that will just be like timeless.
So this is for everyone that's listening. You just might be asking a question and found this conversation. So Tori is going to use the Follow Your Heart Oracle to give us a shared reading.
Okay, this is for us. Go team. I always just take a breath, and I invite y'all to do that too. Give him a little shuffle, just calling in a message that is for following our hearts right now and the rest of the day. Okay, this has been coming up a lot. This is Thy Will Be Done. So each of the cards are associated with one of the 7 major chakras or shadow work. They're organized because I do like a little organization. And so Thy Will Be Done is of the solar plexus. So we're getting into our personal sun, our inner sun, our energy to get something done, to bring action forth, our inner fire. And so Thy Will Be Done reminds us to think outside the box, but to also make moves towards our truth.
I do have a question about that because I know there will be some people with Judeo-Christian religious upbringing. The first thing that they'll see when they see Thy Will Be Done is, yes, that's part of the Lord's Prayer, Thy will be done. Tell us a little bit about what came through the moment you decided on this card.
Okay, so that is the thing. I had this Christian upbringing, and again, I'm mixing and matching worlds. I'm a little bit of a heretic, if you will. So this just was such a steady verse. And I really believe that there are ways to make meaning out of things that come from our past, even if it's not the traditional definition. So Thy Will Be Done just came from that upbringing and knowing that I could bring new life into something that was a foundation for me, and I could believe in something and bring meaning to it forward.
All right. Beautiful.
So Thy Will Be Done. The check mark is interesting because it comes from the Roman world and Roman tradition. What I read about the symbolism of the check mark is they would be checking their list of soldiers and doing a V next to them because Veritas, the goddess of truth.
That is so wonderful to know. Thank you.
And it got skewed over time to look like this. So that, again, we're bringing in like different symbolism, different cultures to pinpoint something that brings meaning now. So Thy Will Be Done is actually about truth and following your truth and just taking little steps to move forward.
But now every time I see a check mark, I'll think Veritas.
Truth.
Can we just see a few more?
Yes,
I just want to
of
see how
course.
you infuse
Okay.
meaning into the art.
So while I'm flipping through, I'm going to share that, again, I picked 24 cards because it just felt right intuitively. Now, 6 years later, 5 to 6 years later, as I am studying the
I had
Norse,
gotten that card 2 years ago.
Do
I still
put it in?
remember the note card you
I
gave
like to
me.
do little note cards in my readings. It's a lot to remember. So why do I find out as I'm studying my Norse ancestry years later that there are 24 runes in the Elder Futhark? So all this time I've been connected with my lineage and didn't know it. So now I have worked to connect each of the runes to one of my cards. And so they kind of work together.
So does this sound like there might be a runes oracle card set in the works?
All right, so I did make a personal set of runes, but something so interesting about practicing this and intuition is that when I pulled my first rune, which was at my friend's house, it wasn't my own set yet. I just embarked on this journey. Immediately I heard, this is only for you.
Oh.
Do not go out and just try to be integrating it into your field of work. You know, I read Oracle for a living. I pull tarot. Sometimes I layer that in. But immediately I heard this is just for you. So it's been, and rune.
And you never heard that with this set?
I never, oh no, I'm popping off. I'm out there.
Yeah.
But the runes, they translate to secret. Okay. So they are very, I wouldn't say a close practice, but they are very close to the heart. So I very much have work to do and much to learn. Oracle's so free-flowing that I felt like I could just jump in and share with everyone, whereas this has a little more to learn. I have to get my footing first, so
okay.
Just for me.
And for anyone that's watching and they've, learned some fascinating things from you, how can they work with you? Tell us about your work. How can we reach out?
Yeah, well, I'd love for y'all to sign up for my email list because I be sharing on there. I'm back to old school blogging. Oh, yes. Okay, thank you. So Tori toryrerick.com. You can sign up for my list and you can find the deck when it's restocked. And I do oracle readings online, but my favorite are to sit in front of people, of course. And so I'm at different festivals. If you're in Colorado, check my events page. But I think coming fall, I'll be expanding to do more coaching again and mentorship and really extend the time I have with someone. As much as I love the one-offs, I think really spending time building ritual together is going to be impactful.
So, Tori, as this podcast is called Magic Happens with Melody Who, I was wondering if you can share some thoughts about how we can bring more magic into our lives.
Okay, there are two words that come to mind: art and altars. It can be so simple, and I think the simpler the better. Being that I have kids, we're doing art every day. We're just expressing. We're using egg cartons, we're scribbling, we're cutting pages out just to express something. So make a piece of art and maybe even hang it up and create an altar. And it doesn't have to be an altar to someone. It could be an altar to yourself. It could be an altar to something you want to embody. But I think creating and carving out a little space, a little corner of your home to just sit, meditate, put pretty things that you collect will draw more magic into your life.
Thank you so much for the wonderful words of wisdom, and thank you so much. I'm so glad that you get to meet Tori. Find out more about her on her website. Thank you for tuning in to Magic Happens with Melody Who. Hope to see you next time.
Bliss be with you.